Greeting LEFRAK City tenants.
Listen, Landon, you got 10
with
minutes.
you. All right.
Within 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Sean. Mostly thanks all of you for coming. Yeah, thank you.
Love you, Brad.
And I'm so honored to be here. I mean,
safe
this place is really the kind of place that we have to preserve and make strong for New York City. So I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander. That's your Chief Financial Officer and your Chief Accountability Officer. But more than that, I'm a Brooklyn dad. I have enjoyed nothing so much as raising my 2 kids in this city. And every day I meet families who don't have an easy time raising their kids in this city because the housing is outrageously expensive, because the child care costs too much, because people don't feel safe in their neighborhoods, and because government isn't working to fight for people and deliver for people. I got my start in New York City so long before I was in elected office. I spent 15 years running 2 community-based organizations in Brooklyn. And these were groups that got started when the housing was abandoned and the neighborhoods weren't safe. And they said, we're going to fight for every tenant in this neighborhood. So we went into housing court and we protected tenants by making sure people had lawyers and couldn't get evicted. We fixed up those abandoned buildings and turned them into affordable homes. On one block, where I learned more than from any other, HUD came and said to the 102 Black and Puerto Rican families there, you've got 90 days to leave. And one woman, Yvonne Muhammad, a mother of 4, said, we're not going anywhere, nos quedamos, we're staying right here. And not only are we going to stay, you're going to sell those buildings to us. And lo and behold, HUD turned those buildings over, and 40 years later, 102 Black and Puerto Rican working and middle class families continue to own the block of St. John's Place between 5th and 6th in Brooklyn. And that gave me a perspective of what New York City could look like if we put working and middle class families at its heart. So, through my career in nonprofits, through my time in the city council, and through my time as controller, I have developed or financed the preservation and creation of over 50,000 affordable homes for working class families, many of them right in my neighborhood around the Gowanus Canal. Best transaction I did as controller was when Signature Bank failed. You remember that a couple years ago? 35,000 rent-stabilized units were almost lost. We made a great investment from the pension funds. Any retired city workers in the room, teachers, firefighters, anybody else, we took some of the pension money and we invested it and we bought the mortgages on all 35,000 units. Everyone still rent stabilized, everyone still affordable, and returning 11% for your pensions. When you run the city well, you can save affordable housing and we can make the city safer. And that is what I'm running to do. I am running for mayor to bring honest and effective leadership back to City Hall, get rid of the corruption that has been in too many agencies, to stand up to Donald Trump on behalf of the values and immigrant neighbors and budget and healthcare and housing of this city, and most of all, to run city government better so we can have a safer, more affordable, and better run city. Let me just tell you a little bit what I mean by safer, by more affordable, and by better run, and then I'll be very happy to have your questions. So, as State Senator Myrie mentioned, my #1 pledge on safety is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We do not have to be a city where a couple thousand of our mentally ill neighbors are sleeping on subway platforms and the stoops of our building and on sidewalks, sometimes becoming a danger to themselves and to others. Right now, what the outreach workers say to those folks, if they say anything to them all, is, we have a bed in a shelter for you. And a lot of times those folks say, I've been in a shelter, I don't feel safe there, I'm not going. And then they just stay right there. Meanwhile, there are cities around the country, and we saw this right here during COVID. If you offer someone a room in a supportive housing development or an SRO, apartment of their own with services, they are able to stay stably housed 70 to 90% of the time. Now, if they don't take that, then sometimes you have to remove them and put them in the hospital. But even when they come out of the hospital, you got to have a housing unit with services for them, or they're just going to keep cycling from subway to street to hospital to jail and right back again. I also have a plan to deal with retail theft. I heard Julianne talking about that across the street here. That's essentially a panic button. at the checkout register that will connect directly to the precinct, that will mark the time on the cameras, and that will enable, and this has worked in other cities around the country, to make it possible to do good investigations and cut down on retail theft. And then the thing that perhaps is closest to my heart on safety is safe streets. And I've been so proud to work with some of the folks here and others in Families for Safe Streets, because we know what's necessary to cut down on traffic crashes and keep our kids safe. I've got a lot of other transportation and safety plans I'm happy to answer in your questions. So that's safer. More affordable, as I told you, has been the work of my whole adult life. Over 50,000 units of affordable housing that I either worked on developing or financing as mayor. First, I'm going to make sure every rent-stabilized tenant is protected. If you have to go into court, you're going to have a lawyer with you there. The landlord always has a lawyer. The tenant should always have a lawyer. I co-sponsored a law that gives right to counsel. Unfortunately, we got up to 2/3 of tenants having lawyers, but under Eric Adams, it's now back down under 40%. When I'm mayor, we're going to follow through on right to counsel. So any tenant facing eviction in housing court has a lawyer. You guys have done a lot of that kind of work here. Props to you guys for winning the clarity that you shouldn't have to pay for water on top of your rent. That was a big deal. I give you props for that. And this year, every year I go to the Rent Guidelines Board and advocate, and this year I am advocating for a rent freeze for rent-stabilized tenants, because there have been, the last 3 years, landlords have had very large increases. Net operating income for them, profit for them is up. Tenants deserve a break this year. I also have a plan to build a lot of new affordable housing, including models like LEFRAK City. I was surprised to learn, and you might be as well, New York City, the city of New York, owns 12 golf courses. And I mean, I like golf as much as the next person, so I'm not looking to do away with it. But 8 golf courses would be plenty for New York City to own.
15 cents or 12 cents on my interest on my security deposit.
All right. So, I mean, major capital improvements and then what are called IAIs, individual apartment increases, are 2 places where the rent laws, which are set in Albany, allow landlords like this one to increase rents over time. And I read that LEFRAK City actually has the largest number of evictions of any housing development in the city of New York. So it is clearly critical to have a mayor that is on the side of tenants. I mentioned my plan to make sure everybody's got a lawyer, because landlord always has a lawyer. On MCIs and IAIs, to cap them will require legislation in Albany. And I actually talked on the, I put out some proposals for how that could be done, but you have some tenant advocates in the room. I would be very happy to go with you to Albany and figure out how we could get reasonable caps. But what the city can do is work with owners and tenants together on a package that makes sure, if we're giving tax breaks, if we're providing vouchers in any of those buildings, if we're putting in this program called Unlocking Doors, it comes with caps, and landlords can voluntarily sign a regulatory agreement with the city of New York, and I'd be glad to talk with you and figure out whether there will be some way to work together to make that happen here.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make this my last statement. I promise to come back as your mayor, and you can hold it in my first year in office.
I take care of it.